This is the advice that I wish I had heard sooner rather than later. If you are in your 20s and you are ambitious, the single worst thing you can do is drift and not be intentional. I hustle more than anyone. I pride myself on that, but this is actually more about like understanding leverage and understanding compounding. The more that you are shameless, the more likely you are to win. If you are shameful, you will not win. Welcome to Trailblazers, the podcast where we sit down with contrarian tech leaders who found conventional success in unconventional ways. So today on this solo episode, we are going to be talking about 10 pieces of advice for ambitious 20-somethings. If you are not a 20-something, aka you are like 19 or under, or you are 30 or above, this episode is still for you. I hope you enjoy it. But this advice is really targeted more towards early career folks, and really targeted, honestly, to like Erica at 22, Erica at 21, myself. This is the advice that I wish I had heard sooner rather than later. And I pulled a lot of things that I have posted about on social media that have gotten a lot of traction. So these are sort of unique and quirky tips and pieces of advice for folks that are earlier in their career. Some of the things that I hope you get from this is that if you are in your 20s and you are ambitious, the single worst thing you can do is drift and not be intentional. It's such an important decade, and there's a reason why the podcast I ran way before this one was called Dear 20-something, because I really feel like we don't talk enough about this very formative decade where people have highs and lows and really figure out who they are. This is also not about like promoting hustle culture. I hustle more than anyone. I pride myself on that, but this is actually more about like understanding leverage and understanding compounding, because I think those are things that when you're younger, you think you just have to like work, and that's going to get you far. And yes, that will get you quite far, but there's like other things too, that you hear about working smarter, not harder. There's other things that you can be incorporating that will just like give you leverage and make your life a little bit easier and make that hard work have more lift in your life. So anyway, here are the 10 things I wish someone told me at 22. Okay, so the first is build a personal brand. I'm not saying everyone needs to be an influencer, but it's about clarity, reputation, and distribution. It's about getting clear on what you stand for and who you are. It's about building your reputation as someone who is consistent, someone who has a point of view, and distribution, building out your own distribution, having people know who you are, know what you care about, know how you spend your time. Your personal brand isn't just something that lives online, by the way. It's also something that lives offline. So it's basically how you show up to the world and what people think of you as, what your brand is as a person. I think what people really underestimate, especially when they're younger, is how much a personal brand compounds. You can meet someone and a decade later, like from the internet, let's just say, they could hire you for a job. You can actually be building a personal brand and have people talk about you when you're not even in the room because they saw something interesting that you posted or they like something that you're working on. A personal brand compounds. And I think that when you start it earlier, just like investing in a Roth IRA earlier, it only helps dramatically. And the other thing I want to talk about with the personal brand is that it's not like you need to be everything to everyone. You really only need to start with one thing that you care about. So it might be that you love Broadway and musical theater, and you just start thinking about that and talking about that and posting about that. And then that evolves into, okay, not just theater, but actually being a critic for theater. And now you post when you go see shows. And so people know you as someone who just loves theater. Maybe I'm trying to think of something else. Maybe you really care about education and you're a teacher and you share what you've learned from being in the classroom and what you're excited about in the future of education. And you start with like one thing, and then as time goes on, you can add more, but you don't have to be everything to everyone. But starting and testing and being okay with being a little bit cringy about it with one domain that you care about, sharing that with the world, sharing your point of view, that'll go a long way. The second piece of advice is to choose very timely and unique roles. So like obviously right now there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening in AI. Everywhere you look, that's all you will hear. And there's one specific role that I talk about a lot, and it's called the go-to-market engineer. Now this is one of many different roles that's particularly timely right now, but the go-to-market engineer is very interesting because you're using a lot of AI tooling to help companies generate more revenue. You're sort of, they say instead of like, coding software, you're coding revenue. But it's a very interesting role that sort of sits at the center of like RevOps and growth and like EPD, which is like engineering, product, and design. It's sort of a funky role. It sits in different spots in different organizations. But that is a particularly unique role right now that wasn't really as common 5 to 10 years ago, but you will learn so much in it because it's really brand new. You know, I feel this way a little bit with folks that got into crypto a few years ago. Like someone that was like running marketing at a crypto startup. Like it was just such a unique time and there was so much to be learned. You could become an expert quite quickly. And there was a lot of uncharted territory. And I think that the more that you can do that younger, the more you will build this like expertise, become an expert in a certain domain. And that'll help you a lot. I think seeking out titles that sit, especially at the intersection of a couple things, really often does this. Hence go-to-market engineer, right? So that's often a good test. Yeah, this is another one. So like creator partnerships, you know, maybe about, let's call it 8 years ago, creator economy really started to take off. You know, creator partnerships, very interesting. What does partnerships look like with creators? What do those contracts look like? What does social media marketing look like? What does paid marketing look like? What does influencer marketing look like? Like you're helping form a lot of that narrative. And I think the more that you can position yourself in those new and exciting and innovative domains, the better off you'll be. I also think you can skip a lot of the corporate ladder stuff if you become an expert at something. Another example of this is like the Duolingo owl on TikTok. You know, that I don't know her name, unfortunately, but there was a young woman who was running the social media, totally skyrocketed her career because she was doing something that was super innovative, super fresh, and wasn't afraid to take that risk young. That's the kind of stuff that can really help you elevate like crazy. And the market really does reward people who jump into these like emerging categories and emerging roles. The third piece of advice I wish someone gave me was that the higher you move up the ladder, the less you do. And I think that this is sort of a confusing thing for people because they expect that the more senior they are, the more that they get paid, actually the more work that there is. But the work actually looks very different. So Jeff Bezos talks about this a lot actually, but when you're more junior and entry level, you do a lot of executionary work. You do like 1,000 tasks every week that all have very minimal importance to the business. And then the farther up the ladder you get, and when you're at the very top, you basically make like 3 important decisions every single year. And so it's not really measured in terms of like the exact output of every single day. You can't really measure like productivity the way that you used to be able to. Or like when you were in school, you know, like you do your homework, you check it off every day, you do a test, you get a grade. Like those feedback loops are so much smaller and you're doing so many little tasks. Whereas the more senior you get, it's more about like often relationships and managing people and thinking about bigger picture strategy stuff. And like, it's actually, you're getting paid more for like prioritization and like aligning people on messaging and your own judgment based on your own experience. That's really what it is. So there's this like awkward shift that happens where you're like shedding the work and you're doing different types of work. You're shedding the executionary work to do more strategic work. And that's something that like I wish I knew to expect because, you know, I hear this a lot from folks that go up the ladder. Like it feels weird, but that's totally normal. It's like a snake shedding its skin. I also want to say that if you don't make this transition as you move up the corporate ladder, and let yourself get rid of some of the executionary work to do some of the more strategic work, you're always going to remain an IC. You're always going to remain a very highly valuable, but just IC, individual contributor. You're going to basically always be like an executor, and you're never going to be able to like really move up into leadership. So this is something to just be aware of and to work on, honestly, come to terms with. On Trailblazers, we spotlight founders who succeed by doing things differently, not by following the playbook, but by rewriting it. Many of those unconventional builders and the VCs backing them run on Brex because it helps them scale with speed and focus. From smart corporate cards and high-yield banking to AI-powered expense management, Brex gives startups the financial stack they need from day one so they can spend more time building and less time managing back-office operations. More than 30,000 companies, from breakout startups like Anthropic and Cursor to global leaders like DoorDash and Plaid, trust Brex to help them spend smarter and move faster. That's why we, as a venture firm and also the podcast, run on Brex too. Sign up at brex.com/trailblazerspod to get started and claim exclusive rewards. That's brex.com/TRAILBLAZERSPOD. RocketReach is the leading sales and lead intelligence solution trusted by sales, marketing, recruiting, and business development teams to grow their businesses. Whether you're looking for a developer halfway around the world, a C-level executive in New York, or a potential investor in Silicon Valley, we connect you directly. With RocketReach, you can easily access the most comprehensive, accurate compilation of emails and phone numbers on Earth. That puts you in front of the right people faster and backs you up with a database that reaches across industries, markets, and titles, using AI to continually improve the quality of your contacts. With RocketReach, you can reach anyone so you can reach higher. Many of you know I love cold outreach. It's been the root of many of my success so far, and this is the tool that I've used the whole time. Trailblazer listeners get 15% off any plan at rocketreach.co/trailblazers. That's rocketreach.co/trailblazers. The fourth thing, so this actually, funny enough, went viral on TikTok, so I'm sharing it again here. Even when you're very young and early in your career and you don't think that you have that much money or you don't have that much money, it's not a bad idea to get a stylist, like a personal stylist. And a lot of people hear this and they're like, I can't pay someone to help me get clothes. I can barely afford the clothes. Here's my take. So in the workplace, you really want to signal confidence. You want to wear colors that make you shine. You want to, a lot of it's like subconscious too. You want to show up, not just so you feel more confident too, but that other people respect you, and respect your point of view. And looking put together, looking finished, like having the earrings and having the belt and having the color of the year and whatever, all that stuff helps. And a lot of these stylists actually, one, a lot of them are getting started, so they're like willing to help you for free if you share it on social or help you for a minimal amount. Two, a lot of these brands actually pay the stylist like an affiliate fee if they sell certain clothes. So a lot of the times actually, like, they're happy to just be making money off of that. And then, another thing is like, sure, maybe that's what you actually spend like your Christmas money or your Hanukkah money on that year, is a small chunk goes to looking and feeling your best and growing up and like not wearing the jeans that you had in high school. I think a lot of people never like consciously make that decision, and then they still show up to work as like a 25-year-old wearing something that they wore to class as a 19-year-old in college. It's really important to invest in showing up and your clothes and your aesthetic. I also think a stylist helps a lot with removing decision fatigue, which is something I struggle with. This is why I'm not always so excited to cook meals or pick my outfits, because I want to reserve my creativity for my work. But a stylist really helps with that, because a lot of the best ones will put together outfits and you just have to match it. So think about it. Think about getting a stylist. Okay, my fifth tip is another potential fractional hire, if you will, but to get an executive assistant earlier than you think. There is a lot of really amazing executive assistants that are based overseas, who often don't cost as much as assistants here in America. So they're a lot more affordable for younger folks who are maybe tight on budget. But it's really about buying back your time and offloading things that, someone else can handle. A lot of like administrative tasks, scheduling, personal admin stuff. Let's say you're planning a wedding. If you really look at the numbers, it's often quite affordable to hire someone to help you with those tasks. And I think even if that executive assistant is only freeing up like 8 hours a week or 10 hours a week, that can do wonders. Literally, that can do wonders. And often it's like in the hundreds of dollars a month. I mean, it's not like you're paying like $200K plus benefits plus whatever. There's amazing agencies that will help you literally find an assistant to do things that don't make sense. Maybe it's making content. Maybe it's friending people on LinkedIn. Maybe it's calling Spectrum Internet to get your phone bill, reimbursed or whatever. Like there's all these different things that they can help with. And I think the earlier that you bring on someone to offload that stuff, the better. And especially if you are someone that's like a side hustler or you're like applying for a bunch of jobs, you can use that person to help you reach out to, if you only have time for, 2 emails after work or 20 emails after work, they can help you do 200, right? Because they can do it while you're working. Okay, the sixth tip is that I didn't realize how shameless you need to be to win. And this is something that the word shameless, I think, triggers a lot of people, because I think that means that you can be like rude or abrasive. It's not it at all. You just have to remove the notion of having any shame and ask for what you want. I think, there's this book called The Pfeffer's Rules of Power, where it talks about, I believe it's 7 rules of power. I could be wrong. But this is a book that's been recommended to me and I've sort of heard about in the ecosystem, that it's really about how the most successful people are really just not scared of being embarrassed. That's really just all it is. They're not afraid to go after their dreams, and often nothing separates them versus someone else with the exact same background except for shamelessness. It's the only thing. There's people that are a lot less intelligent, less connected, less prepared than you that are doing the thing that you want to do because they are shameless. And so once you realize that ambition requires you to be unembarrassable, I like to say, then you're completely unstoppable. It requires having thick skin and just making the ask. Here are some of the rules of power, by the way. I wrote some down. Act with confidence, ask for things, actually ask for them. I always say this, but if you want someone to give you money, you're fundraising, you want someone to join your team and you're hiring, ask them, will you join? Will you give me money? You have to ask. Break some rules, keep moving. Yeah, these were some of the ones I thought were really interesting, but the thesis here is just the more that you are shameless, the more likely you are to win. If you are shameful, you will not win. Okay, the 7th piece of advice is to detach self-worth from rejection. This is easier said than done, and this is part of the shamelessness piece because it's hard to ask for things and be told no. But a quick no is better than a long yes, because the long yes often is never really a yes because you don't even know where it's going or where it's coming. In terms of removing your self-worth from rejection, there's a couple tips here. One is telling yourself that rejection is data. It's not about your identity, it's just data. I always talk about how everything is a statistic. So let's say, again, we'll use the job hiring as an example. Let's say you're hiring or you're recruiting for a job and you apply to 100 companies and you hear back from 5 and 1 gives you the offer. Great. If you've only reached out to 20, you'll hear back from 1, you won't get an offer. You need to just keep going until you hit 100 to then have 5 reach out to you and 1 give you the offer. Everything in life is like that. You might think that the number is 10, but it's actually 50. Or you might think that the number is actually 2, but it's actually 50. It's just how gritty you are to stay in the game long enough to realize that statistic come true, I think that's really what it is. And it helps remove the emotion out of it when you think about it so quantitatively. That's something that I've really had to work on, is just a numbers game. 1 in every X replies, and then 1 in every X of the replies says yes. So now I just have to hit X many people. And that's what I do with everything. And I think the more that you frame it like that, the less it stings. I wrote this too, but the people who break out early are the ones who don't take no personally. I think that's really the root of it. If you work in venture or startups, you know the constant juggling act. Replying to messages from co-investors, founders, LPs, customers, and teammates, all hitting your personal number. I know this very well. We all hand out our cell, which means your EA can't help an iMessage, and important threads get buried. That's why I'm very excited about Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's built for founders and investors like us who want communication that feels personal but stays organized. Quo gives you a dedicated business line on your existing cell phone. And if you already have a business number, you can bring it with you for free. Plus, you'll get call summaries, transcripts, and an AI voice agent called Sona that can answer and schedule when you're offline. We're actually cooking up something fun with the Quo team right now and using that same voice AI tech in a new way for our firm. More soon, but it's a great reminder that you can use voice AI to stay top of mind of your customers' needs. Quo is trusted by over 90,000 businesses and rated number 1 on G2 for customer satisfaction. You can get 20% off your first 3 months at quo.com/trailblazers. That's quo.com/trailblazers. So I've actually used Gusto at 3 different companies, and every time it's been such a relief. It's simple, it's reliable, and my paycheck was always on time, no drama. And unlike the big clunky payroll systems out there, Gusto is online payroll and benefit software specifically built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. For smaller startups in particular, I have found that it's the most affordable and easy to set up option, and it's the one that we recommend to all of our startups at our firm. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/trailblazers and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/trailblazers. One more time, gusto.com/trailblazers. The 8th piece of advice is to really think hard about going to grad school. I am in an interesting spot in my life right now where I have a lot of friends who have done the grad school thing and not only had to pay for it, but also the opportunity cost of not making money. I actually know some folks who are still thinking about it, although I'm kind of on the tail end of that. I myself ended up doing grad school, but I did it as part of my undergrad, and it ended up being free for me due to scholarships, so there wasn't the cost factor. But I think honestly, if I didn't have it be free and if it wasn't able to be lumped in with college, I don't know that I would have done it. I don't think I would have done it. It's really expensive. And I'm seeing it now on the other side as someone who has a lot of friends that went through it. It doesn't guarantee a job after, and it's really expensive. Now, if you have someone who's willing to pay for it, or you yourself have a lot of savings, then props to you, then maybe just do it, so you don't have any regrets. But it's really expensive. There are some some jobs, of course, where you need a degree. Like if you're going to be a lawyer or you're going to be a doctor, of course, and that's really important and you don't have a choice. But most grad programs are really expensive and only getting more so by the day. And I think especially in business, which is something I can speak to most closely, you don't really need it. It can help, especially if you go to a top MBA school, but you really don't need it. So just really make sure it's the right choice for you. I don't know why, but where I went to college, it was like really pushed down on us that we all needed to go get, it was in a business school, but we all needed to go get a graduate business school degree. And it was like, oh, absolutely. If you want to be successful in any capacity, you need to do that. And now that I'm in it, I'm like, not really. There's a lot of ways to be successful without a grad degree. It just really depends on your industry. I think the biggest gift you can also give yourself in your 20s, especially if you have any inkling of being an entrepreneur, is to have like a low burn rate, like low monthly expenses, which therefore means often no student debt, so that you can have high velocity, right? That's like the biggest gift you can give yourself. The 9th tip, and this is something that I did learn early on, I learned this in college, is learn how to cold email. This is extremely important. It is the highest ROI skill you can learn. You're not going to be spamming everyone all the time because that's not productive, but writing a very thoughtful, succinct, cold email, knowing how to do that early in your life will only help you, because even I now, as someone who has a good network and feels like I can reach most people, I still send cold outreach all the time. And I'm never not going to, because there's always people ahead of me that I can learn from, or other people in different fields that I can learn from, that I can just reach out to myself. And if I write it in a very thoughtful, clear way, they will get back to me. I really feel this way too. 10 really good emails can change your life. Like if I look back, I can probably pinpoint like 10 emails where they were cold and they changed everything for me. It could be like an investor in my fund. It could be someone who gave me a job. It could be so many. It doesn't even have to be work related, quite frankly, too. It could be like I'm in wedding planning mode and I'm thinking about like a lot of the cold outreach I've been doing for my wedding, asking people for advice and talking to vendors and all that good stuff. You just have to get used to sending a really thoughtful cold email. And then the last piece of advice, which is a bit controversial, but I stand by it, is being private about your age. And I think there's this big pressure to be on like Forbes 30 under 30 and to be this young star, the next Mark Zuckerberg, Age bias is like a real thing. And I think so much of it is subconscious. People will say that they don't judge you based on your age, but they really will. And there's a small fraction of folks in Silicon Valley who like really do love backing young founders, and that's like so much of their thesis and so much of their focus. And that's a very specific subset I'm not really talking about. I'm talking about more like the rest of the world. It's really important to let your work speak for itself, and not let your age really be like the front facing number on the door when people walk into your house, if you will. So one thing I did was I removed my age like on the internet. Like when I would have a birthday, I wouldn't post how old I was. And then my like college and my grad school, I didn't post like the years. Now, if people really wanted to dig, of course they could figure it out, but I'm not like putting it in front of their face. Now it's a little bit different because I'm older and I don't feel like I have to hold on to that so tightly, but I had many experiences. I was one time, managing someone who called me a baby, not in a rude way, but in sort of like, oh, you're such a baby, you wouldn't know. And I was their manager when they found out how old I was. And I've had people just sort of like, especially when I've been building my own businesses, when they kind of find out my age, it's just a little bit of a different vibe. So I don't know. I think maintaining a little bit of opacity with that just really helps you keep your optionality, and it's something to really consider doing. So to sum up, your 20s are not about having everything figured out. Neither your 30s or your 40s, none of us do. But I think it's really important to think about leverage and compounding and talk to people who have tips for you potentially, and don't let this decade pass you by. And I think, I'd be remiss not to mention a book, The Defining Decade, which really shaped my life. I read it early on in my 20s. And it talks about how this is really a very defining time, early career, let's call it 20 to 36, right? Like when you're really just getting started, it's a very, very important time. And the reps do compound. So if you're intentional about the direction you're going and taking a lot of the tips I said to heart, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, you will see the fruits of that hard work. So that's my advice. I certainly don't have it all figured out, but I hope that this helps some of you who are early in your career and who maybe want some tips on what I wish I knew. On Trailblazers, we're always talking about multiplying your impact, and that's exactly what Athena helps you do. Athena pairs you with a world-class executive assistant who becomes a true force multiplier for your business and your life. Working with my Athena assistant has been transformative. Gab was instrumental in raising Park Rangers Capital's fund in ways that I could have never imagined an assistant could contribute, from closing six-figure checks to identifying new LPs we should meet to matching my tone perfectly in follow-up emails. He's elevated my capacity as a founder by giving me more time to focus on the highest leverage work. Athena isn't just about scheduling meetings, it's about unlocking leverage. Hundreds of founders, investors, and executives trust Athena to free their time and scale their impact. Athena is offering our listeners $2,000 off for their first year of service and priority onboarding. And you want that, trust me, there's a very long wait list. When you're ready to multiply your impact and free up time for the things only you can do, go to athenago.me/Erica-Wenger. That's athenago.me/ERICA-WENGER. Thanks so much for listening to the Trailblazers podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. You can also support our work by sharing it with a friend or leaving a quick review. It helps more contrarian builders find us. For more on Park Rangers Capital and our community of elephant founders, head to parkrangerscap.com or find me online at Erica_Wenger. Until next time, keep trailblazing.